Hey, my name is Howard Eburn. I am an alcoholic. When Kathy came up with the idea for the Monday deep dive, one of the first people she suggested that we get to share, not a gentle suggestion, it was let's get young. And so we did. And I'm very happy to say that he's not only one of the first people who shared, facilitated at this meeting, he's now one of the first people to come back for a second time. So I give you our friend, Young L.
Thank you so much, Howard. Hi, everyone. My name's Young. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here. 10 o'clock at night in the UK for me is about 2 a.m. because I wake up at between 3 a.m. and 4. But when Howard asked me, I've got a lot of love for Howard and respect, so I will always do service any time I'm asked. So I'm starting on page 77, halfway down the page. And so we're into the amends process. We don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God when it will serve any good purpose. We are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he has done us more harm than we have done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude towards him, we are still not too keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It's harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing regret. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell him we will never get over our drinking until we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we'll be gratified with the result. There's so much in that, and just to kind of recap very quickly what we've kind of read so far, like DC was doing the last month, in the step 8 and 9 part of the big book, I'm praying for if I haven't got the will to do it, but by now I'm giving myself to God. I look at step 8 and 9 as such a powerful steps. It's like almost this deeper surrender where maybe I'm becoming a little bit smaller by saying, yes, I did it. No, yes, but I did it. And it's saying because now I understand perhaps just a little bit that my real purpose is to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about me. And I was always taught that an amends is not an apology, although that word might come up with the amends. It's not to get forgiveness. And this is just how I've been taught, because someone said, because you haven't got the power, how someone will react to how you make the amends. And so the last couple of lines before I get into what I've just read, it just sums up what an amends is: a sincere desire to set right this wrong. It's coming from my heart, it's coming from my spirit. But a sorry comes from my head, but an amends comes from my heart. It comes from the God in me, a demonstration more than just words. And so I like this bit here. We don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God when it will serve any good purpose. It's kind of almost different than what it said earlier on, where it says to some people we need not emphasize the spiritual feature, but that done people. So to some people, when will it serve good purpose? That's what I have to ask myself when I read that, when I'm making the amends. Well, when will it serve good purpose? Perhaps I'm making an amends to someone who is religious, someone who is spiritual. Maybe I'm making an amends to someone who's like me and is curious to know what happened to me. I'm not going to apologize to God if someone's asking what this 12-step program is about. What happened to you, young? I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell him, I'm not going to shy away from that because this is what this stuff's about getting to God or spirit or power. So I'm maybe it will good, maybe it will serve good purpose. Maybe it will help somebody. Maybe they will pass on the message that, yeah, Young's recovered and he's gone through this change and transformation, and he talks about God today. He's 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 a man of God. Maybe, I don't know if they'll say that. Um, the question. So I love this and I relate to this and I can give my experience on this. The question of how, right? How? So I'm asking questions throughout this process. How I approached the man I hated. I did an amends very recently with someone who tortured me when I was a child. And I didn't beat around the bush when I was first going through the 12 steps. I went out there, I got busy. I knew how important it was to make these amends. And each amends that I made, something shifted in me. My eyes slightly changed. I felt closer to the spirit. But this one, I didn't even think I needed to do this one. But as I grew along the 12 steps, as I went through another step 5, I realized something was blocking me. I realized I was more asleep than I thought I was. And it all pointed directions to this person who had done bad things to me. I'd caused them harm as well. Close. I did. I felt light. Now, the question, of course, was how do I make my approach this man I hated with all my guts? Hated would be an understatement. So the question is how? I have to be close to God. I have to be close to God because everything in my mind told me not to make this amends. Everything was trying to talk me out of this. So how? How? The question, and that's the question I took to meditation. I took into prayer. I took to my sponsor. I took to my spiritual tribe. And ultimately, the answers I got this intuitive thought that if I don't make this amends, I'm always going to be a victim of my past. And there's also another one I'll quickly share with you that when I was 16 years old, my mum chucked me out of my house. I'd just left school. I was just a child. And she'd moved a man into what I saw as my family home, my father's home. She'd moved this man. And obviously, I was an angry little child. I'd smash his car up. I would go up to him with a knife. You know, I was a twisted kid. I was very hurt. My mum had chosen, and so she chucked me out of the home. And in my young mind, she'd chosen a man over me, and I've never lived at home since that day. And I was very broken, and the resentment over my mother, ooh, that lasted for decades. But she's an alcoholic, so I suddenly I could see that anyway. This man happened to be from the nation of Greece. He was a Greek man. So, of course, for 20 years, I hated everyone from Greece because of this moment. I hated this man. This came up for me in my last step 5. Suddenly, the intuitive thought, I need to go and make amends to this man. He was just a man. He didn't know me. He never retaliated. So how do I approach this man with love and compassion and forgiveness and this new set of eyes that I've been given through this 12-step process? Of course, always with God up my side, with God flowing through me. Am I going to approach him with loving eyes? Am I going to be able to approach this person who's just as broken as I am? I probably would have done the same if I saw a house I could move into when I was broken. So, you know, that just keeps coming back. The question of how I approach this man with God, with my head held high, knowing that there's more freedom if I make this amends. It's kind of selfish in a way. There's something in it for me because I'm doing this for me. It might help them, maybe it won't. So that's the question for me. That's the answer that I get. And I'm looking forward to hearing anyone else's answers. It may be he's done us more harm than we've done him. That person who tortured me definitely done me more harm than I'd done them. But like my first sponsor used to say, how free do you want to be, Young? How free do you want to be? Do you still want to be trapped by the bondage of your past, the bondage of yourself? Do you still need to be right? Or do you want to be free? And I want to be free today. And I will go to any lengths. Again, it says, uh, I took it back to that as well in meditation. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning, I would go to any lengths for victory. I'm not taking sobriety for granted. And I can see there's so much more on this path of freedom. What does it say? Though we may have acquired a better attitude. So I've gone through the shift. My attitude has changed. My walk has changed. But even so, I was still not too keen. My mind, which some of the time, maybe most of the time, is not my God, still wanted control and still wanted to tell me, yes, but he did this to you. Do you not remember that? It was still trying to drag me off the spiritual path, still trying to keep me trapped in bondage because it doesn't seem to care for me, my mind. It seems to want me stuck in this self-righteousness. But I am not the man. And this is why the amends process for me is so vital and beautiful and another deeper surrender. Because each amends that I do, my head is held a little bit higher. I feel a little bit closer to the sunlight of the Spirit. I feel a little bit freer. That alcoholic, that drug addict seems to die a little bit more, the person who walked through the rooms. So I've acquired a little bit of a better attitude, but there seems to be this inner and outer conflict in my soul of God and my self-will, always trying to oppose each other. My mind doesn't seem to want the best for me at times, but God does. So thankfully, I got pulled towards making that amends very strongly, and I couldn't deny it anymore. I could not ignore the call from God. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth with this determination and enthusiasm. Let's just do it. I'm not hanging around on this. As soon as I saw it, because like I've said to you, at first, my first time going through the work, I didn't even see this. I didn't see it. But perhaps it was when I start waking up more. It's harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. When I made that amends, I felt a sense of relief. I felt a sense of ease and comfort came over me. And then something, for me anyway, strange happened. I went to a spiritual retreat with one of our fellows, Mike D, and there was an outdoor chapel. And every day I'd wake up very early and I'd pray at this chapel and I'd kneel down and I'd pray. And it was after doing this. And one day I just started weeping, and I say it was strange for me because I don't cry very much. I used to cry so much when I was a child, and I always thought, oh, the tears have just dried up. I'd be very dramatic about it. My tears have dried up, all my pain is. But what I felt was I was growing. I was able to feel more. I was able to feel more. Perhaps it was from doing that. Perhaps something had happened, but I didn't understand. When I made that amends, because like we hear often, I'm a very slow learner, and it's usually sometimes years after I look back and I think, that had happened in that moment. And I don't know what had happened, but something had shifted in me again from doing that amends, from those tears. Maybe it was just another, maybe God was saying, okay, I'm still leading you home here, Young. It's another step. It's another step. Because I don't understand. I don't understand. My mind doesn't understand because it's not producing this stuff. And I love these bits that I read out here also, because it's like instructions. Of course, it's instructions for this, but I see it as instructions for life, or how I'm practicing the principles, or this spiritual perfection that I'm trying to aim towards, where it says, we go to him or her in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing regret. So that's exactly how I'm going, in a helpful and forgiving spirit. And you know what I said to that person? If you ever, because they haven't got much money, they're old now, and I saw them not as an enemy anymore. I saw them as some lonely old man. And I said, if you ever need a hand, a help with anything, you can give me a ring and I'll help you. A helpful and forgiving spirit. Because when I forgive, something comes back to me. It's almost the same, perhaps, as giving. When I give to someone, something happens in my heart. But when I take from you, but when I'm just holding on to this hatred and not forgiving, I'm still trapped. I'm not free yet. And then it says, under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Imagine if I live the rest of my life and I never criticize anybody and I never argue with anyone. I certainly don't think my life will be worse for doing that. I've never lay awake at night thinking, oh, I've been too kind today and too forgiving today. But I've lay awake at night thinking, oh, I shouldn't have argued with Andy. I see you smiling, Andy. That keeps me awake. Being forgiving, being helpful, being kind, it's never kept me awake at night. So this is where I'm aiming for. And of course, we're talking about the amends. And for me, this is why this step is where it is in the 12-step process. I've gone through the shift. I've seen myself. I'm convinced that my life run on my self-will can hardly be a success through this step 4 and 5 process, which I did with a newcomer today, and they are just lit up and on fire. And then when I've written this list, I've got this list, people I've harmed. There's my life run on my self-will. There's that. It shows me how much I need God. Because without God, I am one walking defect of character and I cause harm even when I do not want to cause harm. And I see this. I see my need for power throughout these 12 steps. Not just in step 1. It's like, lack of power is my dilemma. Lack of power is my dilemma. Lack of power is my dilemma. It keeps coming back to that. Even when I'm trying to make these amends to the man I hated, lack of power is my dilemma, because my mind is not my power and my mind is trying to tell me not to do it. God, please help me. God, please help me. Bless them, change me. Bless them, change me. That's the prayer I did when I was outside that man's house. Constantly. The question of how we approach the man, bless them, change me. I am praying until I'm pressing the doorbell and something's helping me along the way. So under no condition, when I first came into the rooms, unsuccessfully, let's say, because I didn't dive into the big book and the 12 steps, I looked at the wall of the 12 steps and I thought, yeah, I'll just go straight to step 9. Because I thought an amends, I just go around to everybody, I say sorry, and then you get the bunting out and get the big band and say, yay, Young, you're amazing, you're sober now, we forgive you. Because I felt so terrible inside. I felt full of shame and remorse and guilt. But this is what happened. Because I'd not gone through the shift, because I'd not been able to see my self-will, my defects, I knew nothing about that. When I sit down with you and say, I'm sorry for doing that, and then you start telling me some hard truths about myself, I do criticize. I do argue. I'm unable to sit there and just be quiet and pray. Of course I'm not. I'm still powerless. I still haven't got any power helping me. I still am godless. Well, I'm not godless. I'm just asleep to the power within my soul, the power that's always been there. So under no condition. What do you mean, no condition? That's really clear, isn't it, in the big book? Under no condition. What, none? No. I'm not going to criticize? No. Why? Because it's not kind. I'm not going to argue? No. Why? Because now love and tolerance of others is my code. I know we haven't got to step 10 yet, but by now I see the example of you guys. So that's so clear to me. Simply, we tell him we'll never get over our drinking until we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. Now, early on in the big book, where it says some of these we balked, these 12 steps, hesitated, unwilling. Now, I'm not God, but but I'm not God. I imagine, maybe I'm wrong, that a lot of people in the 12-step rooms have not made all their amends. Sometimes when I speak to people who go back out and I say, "Did you make all your amends?" And they say, quite a lot say, "No, I didn't." Um, and it says there, I'll never get over my drinking until I've done my utmost to straighten out the past. Now, I said to you earlier on that I've only just made that amends to that guy, but I didn't see it. I did my utmost at the beginning to straighten out the past to everything I could see, but I think God reveals things to me when I'm ready. I don't think I would have been ready in year one or two. I just wasn't there. I wasn't quite there yet. Um, we are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what we should do. What does that? Nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until I sweep my side of the street. Perhaps it means I'm still going to be blocked from the sunlight of the Spirit. If I'm still looking over my shoulder, ducking and diving, if I'm still not free from these harms that I've done, I'm still kind of one step in the past, perhaps. And I love this bit here. Instructions, the approach, instructions for life for me, as well as the step 8 and 9 process. Never trying to tell him what he should do. I don't know about you, but I used to be that person. Do you know what you should do? Why don't you do that? You should do that. And someone said to me, they pointed out this to me, and they said, maybe you should say, do you want my opinion? And I'm certainly not going to tell someone what they should do, because now I'm an expert on defects of character because I'm in 6 and 7. And so I can see all yours. Do you know what? Yeah, but you should do that. Maybe you should go in a 12-step program, mate. Maybe you. No, never. That word, never. I mean, never. Why should I? Because now I've been introduced to inventory, looking at myself. And then when I get to step 10, it's this lifelong practice because I'm in pain when I tell you what to do. When I think you should be different than what you've got the power to be. Now, so I'm making these amends. I'm not going to try and tell them. I'm just saying, yes, I did it. I'm being specific. I did it. What can I do to put this right? Again, his faults are not discussed. Yeah, but they're so obvious. This is where I need to bring God into the equation in all areas of my life to help me, to help, to show me, to help me. God help me always. Because I want to point out your faults, especially when I'm going to you saying that I've done some wrong. I want you to say that you no, this is not about the outcome. This is about me going to you with my head bowed with some sort of humility, saying, yes, I did it. Nothing more, nothing less. And I love this bit here. His faults are not discussed. I'm going to stick to my own. And it reminds me, I know I'm jumping about a little bit, but it reminds me of, my step 10 practice where I know if I'm disturbed, it's not because of you. I just stick to looking at me. Anyway, we're on step 8 and 9. I love this here. How's my manner? How does it need to be when I'm doing these amends? Calm, frank, and open. I love that. Because now I am holding hands with the sunlight of the Spirit. My head is held high. I've gone through some sort of change. So I'm not the maniac that I was when I came into the rooms on step 1. I've gone through some sort of shift. So I'm going to pray before I do this. And I'm going to be calm. I'm not going to be all hyper because I don't know the outcome and the outcome doesn't matter. The outcome is not the point. The point is I'm getting into action, like it said at the beginning of this. Now we need more action, more action. So I'm in. I'm all in. Calm, frank. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open-minded to see who knows what's happened. And how, oh, I'm all right for time. We'll be gratified with the result. I've I've just got, sorry, I've just got to read this one next line because I've got to share this with you because it's just come into my mind. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. So we've got a beautiful promise which happened to me on an amends. So I made an amends. This person I treated terribly. It was the mother of my oldest son. I treated her terribly. I was 21 years old. She was 21, just kids. I was an alcoholic. I was a drug addict. I was a drug dealer. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I'd hurt her. I'd not been there for my son, etc., etc. You get the story. And I made the amends with her. And I'm relating this to this. The unexpected happens. So I went in and I was calm, frank, and open. We sat down and I said what I needed to say to her. And then at the end of our conversation, and I said, is there anything I can do to put this right? I will do anything. Bearing in mind, this is a woman who used to think I was a hopeless alcoholic and hated my guts and all the rest of it. She's got a younger son. The father is not very well. And she turned around to me and she said, and she started crying and she said, Young, if anything happens to me, can you make sure my son's looked after? And it blew my mind. I told you I don't cry a lot. I started crying. Maybe I'm becoming a bit more human. That was not on the agenda. That was unexpected. The unexpected happened. And I said to her, I promise you with my heart that I will, because I'm able to do that today. Now, the power of these amends, something exploded in me after that. To know that someone will trust me, God starts, I can't even bring to words what happened in that moment. But this is the change that's happened. These amends, absolutely beautiful. I've got a minute and a half, so I'll quickly share amends that was made to me. I was on a meeting in New York sharing, one of Terry's meetings, and I shared blah, 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 blah. Someone texted me and said, would you allow me to make amends to you? So I fell asleep. The next day I said, I'm quite eager to know who you are. And he said, Young, I've been looking for you for 30 years. He said, you told a story of 4 boys sniffing glue and drinking vodka and getting into crime. He said, I was one of those boys. It blew my mind. He happened to be on that meeting. He's now in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. He'd been in prison for about 20 years, in and out. And he said, I always remembered you for some reason. And now we're really tight and we've been helping people. We've been helping other alcoholics. The amends process blows my mind every single time. I hope that was helpful in some way. Howard, always such a privilege. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.